Hello, guys. How are you? I hope you're doing well. This is week number 5, and we're getting closer to the end of the semester, to the end of this course. I hope that you are enjoying these lessons, these classes, and also the activities, the assignments that you have in your syllabus and that are part of this course. Of course, as always, you are welcome to share with me any feedback. As I said previously, for me, it is very important to know how are you feeling, how are you doing, and if there's something that I can improve, because at the end, my ultimate goal is to help you to have a positive learning experience. So please feel free to contact me if there's anything that you want to share with me, if there's any feedback or a suggestion for me to improve this course, I'm going to be more than happy to do so, all right? Okay, so with that in mind, today we're going to talk about a very important topic. So let me share with you my presentation so we can walk together through the slides of this presentation. So here it is. All right. So the topic of today is social self-care. Now, this might sound like, wait a minute. What do you mean with social self-care? Well, we have been talking about physical self-care, psychological self-care, and today we're going to talk about social self-care. And I didn't call this social care, but social self-care, because I think that it is an invitation to see that the social component of the experience that we are having as a living animals, as a living beings, it implies the physical element, the psychological element, but the social element as well, and as we're going to see next week, the spiritual element, okay? So because of that, we need to take a proactive approach to these elements. We need to take the responsibility on how am I assuming my well-being, how am I taking care of myself in all those 4 components, the physical, the psychological, the social, and the spiritual. So with that in mind, let's go to talk about the topics of today's class. We're going to cover the Holy Trinity as a community. It's just a reflection that I hope that you like to see how we have been created to build community, to be social. Then we're going to talk about the evolutionary psychology on social life. Why is that we have evolved to be social animals? Then we're going to talk about Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. And finally, we're going to talk about your assignment for this week, okay? All right, so let me share with you the Holy Trinity as a community. And as you can see, I include here 2 very interesting pictures. Very, very interesting pictures. Just let me minimize this so we can have all the information here. And I know that in some Christian denominations, sacred art is not as common as in other Christian denominations, such as Orthodox, Catholics, Anglicans. And I think that it is not the point of this class to involve in if it's appropriate or not to have this type of sacred art or not. What I want to do today is to to have a couple of thoughts about this in 2 different ways. One, images can help us to get closer to that is difficult for us to get close just by reason. So the word symbol comes from Latin symbolo, and symbol means or symbolo means what unites, okay? So religious symbols such as paintings, icons, crosses, and so on, it's not the word that I want to use, but they are means to unite 2 realities, or human reality with a divine reality. And with that in mind, we can try to ask ourselves, what is this symbol? What is this painting? What is this object, such as the crosses, is trying to tell me? What is the message that is expressing on me? Or what is the lesson that I can get from this? It's not just about aesthetic appreciation. It's not just about appreciating the skills of the painter or the beauty of the painting, but to appreciate the message that is trying to communicate me, so I can unite my human nature with his divine nature. Okay. Now, with that in mind, let's try to see these two pictures that I have brought to you as an invitation to do so, as an invitation to try to understand what the painters of these paintings were trying to tell us. What is the message behind this? In two ways: on the theological reality or element of the message, but also in the psychological, sociological, in the human element of the painting, okay? And what is what we are seeing here? Well, we are seeing a very interesting representation of the Holy Trinity. You can see these two pictures. This was very common in the past, not only in the Catholic tradition, but also in the Orthodox tradition, in the Byzantine tradition, that they were representing the Holy Trinity with the same three faces. There's a very famous icon from the Russian tradition that it seems that there are like three angelical beings sitting in a table, right? Well, that's also a representation of the Holy Trinity. The three angels, they are pretty much the same, very similar. So what we see here is the representation of the Holy Trinity with three faces of Jesus. Look, it's just one person, but with three faces. And it's the same in both paintings, right? And each person, or in each of these paintings, the person has the three identical faces, which are the faces of Jesus. But they are three. And why is that they are three? Because they represent God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit. And we can see in the first painting that there's the angelical core, right? The angelical core, the angels in this worship of the Holy Trinity around. And there are also some images here that these are human beings. I don't know, I cannot tell if it's Mary and John the Apostle and maybe the other Mary, I don't know. In this one, in the second picture or painting, what we see is again one person with three different faces, the faces of Jesus, three faces of Jesus. Very interesting, right? The artistic component of the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the beard. It's amazing, the similarity, the characteristics that the painter was able to do it. And you can see each one of these faces, and they have this weird effect in the eyes. Like, for example, if you see the one that looks from your right side, will be, I think so. If you're watching this, yeah, I think so. Well, you can see how the eyes are pointing in that direction. But then if you move to the one in the center, you will see how the eyes are moving to the front, which is very weird because you have one eye that is sharing with the other face and they are pointing in a different direction. And then happens the same thing with the other face. It's a beautiful effect that the artist was able to make. An effect to say the Trinity is always looking at you. It's always looking everywhere. But not only that, in the second painting, we see that there's the writers of the Gospels there. One is John, it says Juan. The other one is Luke. And it's more likely that in the bottom, we will see the other two writers of the Gospels. And these were representations, again, trying to send a theological message, but also a human message. Now, there's another thing about the theological element. Both paintings, they have something in the middle, something in the center, a symbol, right? We cannot see it completely in the one that is in the bottom, but we are able to see it in the first one. And it says, Pater non est Filius, non est Spiritus Sanctus, non est. And then in the center, it says, est Deus, est Deus, est Deus. What does that mean? I have this explanation. This piece of art, they are talking about the first one, okay? The one that we are able to see the whole picture, okay? But it's the same message with the second one. This piece of art is one of the few and perhaps the most iconic to present the Trinity as a Christ with three faces. Each face represents a person of the Trinity. What it attempts to show is the sameness of the nature, but the difference in the person. This fresco famously provides the Trinitarian logic triangle. The outer lines, non est, meaning is not the same as, and the inner lines, est, meaning is the same as. Visually stunning, this piece is located in Spain, and this was painted by Jerónimo Cosida in 1570. So again, pater, which is father, non est filius, it is not the son. Filius, it is not, non est Spiritus Sanctus, is not the Holy Spirit. Then the Holy Spirit is not, or non est, pater. It is not the Father. But then again, in the inner, in the inner section of this image, in the inner section of this triangle says, Pater est Deus, Filius est Deus, Spiritus Sanctus or Holy Spirit est Deus. Father is the same as God. The Son, the Filius, is the same as God. And the Holy Spirit is the same as God. So it's a beautiful message, right? It's telling us God is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. They are one God, but they are also different. They are the same and they are different. Okay, now how can we make sense of this in a human element, not in a theological element? Well, the Trinity is a community. It's a community of three, which every one of them has their own characteristics, but at the same time, the three of them are interconnected. The three of them are one and the same thing. What is this telling us? Well, what it's telling us, beyond the theological perspective, is that we were created for community. We were created to be interconnected. That's why at the beginning of the presentation, I include this picture as well, where you can see all these little people interconnected. I'm reading a great book by Thomas Merton, which the name of the book, or the title of the book is No Man is an Island. There's no such a thing as a independent human being, completely independent human being. what in reality happens is that we are all interconnected. What I do has an impact on you, and what you do has an impact on me. And because we were created for community, because we were created under the likeness and image of God, we need to understand that our potential or fulfilling or well-being as a humans is going to be only achieved through community. Seeing not only about what is good for me, but seeing also what is good for others. That's why when they go with Jesus and say, teacher, tell us which is the most important of all the commandments. And Jesus answered, the first and most important is to love God with all your heart and all your soul. And the second, and equally important, is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. Look, such an amazing teaching there, such a beautiful and powerful message. He's putting at the same level the love of God with the love of our neighbor and with the love of ourselves. Now, it's not a self-love, it's not a self-esteem as we understand nowadays. Because what we understand nowadays is that self-love or that self-esteem that psychology talks so much is about doing whatever you want. It's defining yourself. It's living without limitations, living without restraints. But that's not what Jesus is talking. Jesus is not talking about self-determination. Jesus is not talking about creating yourself, because that is putting yourself to the place of God. Jesus is talking about loving yourself as you love others, or loving others as you love yourself, because that need to be one and same thing. And the only way to do that is having a selfless perspective in life, is being able to understand that it's not about what I want in life. It's not about how I would like to be. It's not about conquering our goals. It's about His will, what He wants for us, and how can we work for His kingdom here in earth. Is that disposition that Jesus showed to us with His life. In the Orthodox theology, in the Eastern Christian tradition, they call it kenosis and theosis. Kenosis is the process of selfless, self-emptiness, a decision of stop being who I am to becoming who He is. A process of being empty of myself to let Him to fill myself completely. And that's Jesus. That's Jesus in the cross. That's Jesus one night before the cross when He says, but not my will, but your will. He emptied Himself. He did it first, becoming human. He allowed Himself to be empty and become human, but then He emptied Himself again, accepting the will of the Father and becoming true to Him, faithful to God and to the Father. And that's the invitation that He's doing us. The invitation is, you were created for community. You are not going to find the real well-being, the real personal growth in isolation. You will find that personal growth in the community. When you stop thinking about what you want, when you stop trying to determine yourself, when you stop trying to create yourself, to accept the will of God, to accept that you are His creation, and that the way that He created you is the way that He planned, and that the more you accept Him, His will, His plans for you, the better you're going to contribute to His kingdom. And therefore, it cannot be an isolated self-love. It needs to be a community self-love, a position in life where we think, what is the best, not for me, but for all of us? moving from the self to selves, moving from I to us. Or as the triangle says, no nest, no nest, no nest, but est, right? It's not the same. We are not the same. I am not you. You are not me. But at the same time, we are the same because we all are children of God. We are all part of this human species, human race, and we all need to care for each other. All right, I'm going to stop there because I don't want to make this too long for you guys, all right? I hope that you like those paintings. I think that they are amazing, beautiful. If you ever go to Spain, go and visit them. And I also hope that you can dig deep in the mystery of the Holy Trinity and the community of Trinity, and how we are called to live in community, how we are called to live in society, to be social beings, that we care not only about ourselves, but we care about the selves, the whole community, all right? All right, so now let's move to the evolutionary psychology explanation of social life. And perhaps you're going to be like, wait, what? Evolutionary what? Yeah, I know that for some people, some Christians, evolutionary theory, it's difficult to accept, it's conflictive in some regards. But I think that we need to distinguish in two different evolutionary perspectives, okay, or theories of evolution. One, which is the atheist evolutionary theory, which says that we all come from one bacteria and then we were evolving until the place that we are right now. And then there's the theo-evolutionary theory, which is a theory in evolution that accepts, not only accepts, but understands, recognize the presence of God, God as the creator, and evolution as the means that he is using in his creation, okay? And in this perspective, there's no contradiction between a Christian perspective and a scientific evolutionary perspective. Because from this theo-evolutionary perspective, what they say is God created the universe, the world, everything. God created, and he created through the Big Bang, which, by the way, is a theory that was proposed by a Christian priest, by a Catholic priest. So it's a very Christian, it has very Christian elements as well. So God allowed, or he creates existence, he creates universe, he creates the world, he creates life through the process of the Big Bang, and at the same time with the process of evolution, as the means of the evolutionary process. Now, perhaps you're going to be like, what are we going to do with the Genesis explanation of the creation of the world? Well, there's no really contradiction if we understand the Genesis readings, not from a literal historical perspective, but from on one hand, theological reality, on the other hand, a symbolic reality, and another perspective also from an anthropological, cultural perspective. So you might say, like, how can we know more about this theo-evolutionary theory from a Christian perspective? Well, there are two authors that I suggest you to read. One of them is Dr. Francis Collins, whom he is the director of the National Institute of Health. He is one of the most important scientists in our times. He was also the leader scientist in the Genoma Project. Perhaps you remember that around the year 2002, 3, if I remember well, they were able to decodify all the genetic human information. And he was the leader scientist behind that. And he's one of the proponents of this theo-evolutionary theory. He has a book that it's called The Language of God. I would suggest you to read it. He's not only a great scientist, he's not only a man with full of credentials to support his scientific perspectives, but he's also a devout Christian. He's I don't know what denomination. I'm not sure if he's evangelical or if he's another Protestant denominational Christian, but he's a devout Christian, a solid Christian. And he had that book, The Language of God. I strongly suggest you to read it. Now, the other author that I would suggest you to read it is Pope Benedict XVI. As you know, he was a former Pope. He was a great theologian, a great professor as well. And he addressed this topic of evolution and creation and God in a very, very smart, intelligent way that has allowed many scientists and theologians from different Christian perspectives to engage in conversation with these topics, okay? All right, having said that, what is evolutionary psychology? Well, evolutionary psychology is a theory among many theories in psychology trying to explain why humans are the way that we are, why we behave in the way that we behave. But to do that, they use the evolutionary framework. So they come with the idea that we have been evolving not only physically, but also psychologically to be successful, to increase the chances of survival, to increase the chances of reproduction, to help or contribute to our species, okay? Now, there are many things that have been analyzed from evolutionary psychology. For example, the value of aggression, the value of love, the value or the importance, to say it in a different way, or the importance of sexual attraction, why is that we feel attracted to certain type of people instead of other type of people, and so on. Many, many areas. Political behavior has been also explained by evolutionary psychology and so on. And of course, as every single theory in psychology, evolutionary psychology is wrong. We just don't know when, how, and why, right? I have told you that that's a premise, an idea that Stephen Hayes, the founder of the acceptance and commitment therapy, shares. He says that all theories are wrong, but it's just a matter of time that we understand why, how, and where is that they are wrong. And he's right, because that's science. Science is something that is constantly progressing, constantly advancing to have a better understanding of the phenomena, right? So evolutionary theory, it might have some answers to human behavior. It might be wrong in many areas. It might be right in other areas. And it's only across the time, throughout the time, that we're going to be able to identify more clearly what is solid knowledge, sound knowledge, and what was just explanations that they were never able to corroborate or to fully explain human behavior from this perspective. Now, because evolutionary psychology is trying to provide an understanding of why humans behave in the way that we behave, there's a lot of room to try to explain why is that we humans need social life. Why is that we humans are social animals? And that is the first question that I have for you. Why is group membership so important to humans? Right? Why is that we care so much? We see that even nowadays, right? I'm a Democrat, I'm a Republican, I am a Orthodox Christian, I'm a Catholic Christian, I'm a Dutch Reformed Christian, I'm a evangelical Christian, I'm American, I am Mexican, I am black, I am white, I am blue, I am, right? People have like this deep desire of belonging, to be part of the group, to have a membership, right? Like to be part of a group, to be accepted by the group. Why is that? Why do we evolve to social animals? Why is that we not only care about being members of a group, being accepted by the group, but we do bad if we're not accepted by the group. As I mentioned in our first session, isolation is poisonous. And there's a lot of research showing those who are isolated they have higher chances to develop cancer, dementia, depression, uh, um, and many other physical and mental health problems. Life expectancy diminish when you are isolated. Now, as one of you say, like, well, I am alone, but I'm not a lonely person. I'm not isolated in the sense of the emotional, psychological, and spiritual element, because I always have my relationship with Christ. That's another beautiful thing about Christianity. We're going to talk about that in our next class, is the presence of the hermits, people who left everything behind and they moved to live in solitude, in silence, in quiet, and in a deep, close relationship with God. It's a beautiful thing. The fathers of the desert, they were the founders of that tradition in the Christian tradition. And next class, when we talk about spiritual self-care, we're going to talk about that too, okay? Right. So, but then what's the evolutionary psychology explanation of why we like to be part of the group, and why is that we evolved to become social animals? Well, it's one of the possible hypotheses or answers to that is just look at yourself. Look at the size and strength of your nails. Look at the size of your muscles and the strength of your muscles, of your teeth, and compare yourself with our predators. Compare those muscles, those nails, those teeth with those from the lion or the tiger or the wolves or the coyotes even. See yourself and compare your evolutionary advantages with your predators. Well, it's evidently that strength was not one of those advantages. It is evident that with our physical characteristics, we will not be able to survive to our predators. A long time ago, this human race, this human species will be over if we will have to rely solely in our physical strength. We, as a species, we had two different advantages. Two advantages that are very unique across all other animals, across all the creation. One of them is our intelligence. We are extremely intelligent in comparison with other animals. Now, you may say, well, what about dogs, that they are able to discover cocaine in the middle of an airport, or they are able to even to identify tumors in people's body? That's amazing. There are dogs that they are trained to identify the tumor, where the tumor is located, and they are very accurate. But that's not necessarily intelligence as the way that we understand intelligence. That is the result of training and the result of their superpowers, that are their senses, right? The sense of smell in dogs is amazingly and much, much higher than our sense of smell. And because of that, they can detect those patterns that we are not able to detect. Or like if you see a vampire, right? A vampire. Yeah, well, it's just that there are bats that they are vegetarians and there are bats that they suck blood, right? So don't think about Dracula here, just think about the bats that they suck blood. They are called vampires as well. They have echolocation. Their sight is very bad. They leave their caves in the middle of the night, either to hunt fruit, to recollect fruit, or to hunt insects, or to suck the blood of animals, right? And for being able to find them, they use echolocation. It's amazing. The other day I was watching a program of one of these bats hunting a scorpion, which, by the way, that scorpion has the most powerful poison of all the scorpions. But guess what? That bat is immune to that poison. Amazing. And he's able to detect the scorpion by his movement. because using echolocation, the wave sounds, they go and they come, and they are able to identify with precision and to eat the scorpion in the middle of the night. Amazing superpowers for us. But that's not intelligence. Those are their senses, right? Intelligence is the capacity to solve problems, to come with solutions to problems, using technology, using creative, innovative processes. And that's a human characteristic. Now, some animals, they have certain levels of intelligence, for sure. One of them is the octopus. Monkeys and chimpanzees, they have certain levels of intelligence. There are some monkeys that they have even learned how to use tools to hunt ants and eat the ants, or to open nuts without smashing them. It's very interesting. But it's a very primitive in comparison with humans. So one of our evolutionary advantages is our intelligence. We have such a sophisticated brain with such a developed prefrontal and frontal areas in our brain and the cortex of our brain that it's amazing, right? But the other element was the group. Without the group, even with our intelligence, we are condemned to die. And just think about this. We, 21st century human beings, that we are so proud of ourselves because we have computers, cellular phones, and now we have electric cars. How many of us will be able to survive in the middle of the wilderness with no technology at all? Either we will be killed by a predator, or we will die of hypothermia, or we will die of starvation because we don't know how to do that. And even if we were able to do that, to survive in the wilderness, we're still very vulnerable with our predators. So we need the group, because the group is in reality, or muscle, or huge nails, or huge teeth. In reality, that is our group. That is where our power resides. So if you as an individual think about first humans in Earth, if you were rejected by the group, that was a condemnation to death. It was very unlikely that you would be able to survive. So from an evolutionary psychology perspective, we have evolved to be social animals, because in that way, we have more chances to be successful in reproduction, but we also increase the chances to be success in surviving with the protection of the group. Now, it's not only that we care about the group because we want to be successful in those two areas, but it's a reciprocal thing. It's not only about what can I get from the group, but it's also what am I able to provide to the group? Because the group as an organism will be thinking like, okay, we accept you, but what are you bringing to this group? Otherwise, you're going to be a weight for us. You're going to be, you're going to be consuming our resources, which will not be very intelligent if you are not providing. And some of the individual differences that we see among humans can be explained in that way. People who are fearless, people who are aggressive, people who like to take risks, well, they were bringing that risk-taking behaviors. They were providing that to the group in the sense that they were probably the most successful hunters, the most successful warriors, people with high IQs, able to identify problems and solve problems. Well, they were very valuable as well because they could provide solutions to daily life problems. Now, people who are loving, kind, that people, they also have value in the group because that loving kindness, it's important as an emotional heal, to have a healing process, to have someone who's empathic, right? Perhaps those were the medicine men, right? In the primitive communities and so on. So you can see the group, it was about surviving. So from evolutionary psychology, we have evolved to be social animals to increase the chances of survival and reproduction. But it's not just one way direction, it's both ways directions, because I take from the group these advantages, but I have to provide something to the group. If you were not providing something valuable to the group, they were rejecting you, as we are still doing it nowadays. That's what happened with criminals, right? When a criminal is not providing, but just taking from society, taking from the group, we reject that person. We put that person in jail because he's taking our resources without providing, without contributing. So this is another way of understanding why it's so important, the social life. Now, let's go to Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development. So we have seen from a spiritual perspective how important it is to be community, to be socially integrated. We have talked about an evolutionary perspective as well. Now we're going to move to a more individual understanding of psychosocial development and why it's so important to be socially integrated with others. Erik Erikson was a psychoanalyst, and he was part of Freud's school, but he disagreed with Freud in the emphasis that Freud was giving to sexual development. As you might remember from your lifespan development or your intro to the psych class, Sigmund Freud, he was talking about 5 stages of psychosexual development: the oral stage, the anal stage, the phallic stage, then the latency stage, and finally the genital stage. And he thought that there was this energy that he called it libido, moving from one stage to other, promoting development in humans. And if you were not having a good experience in those stages, that will have a consequence later on in your personality development and your mental health and so on. Now, Erikson, he was like, okay, that's all good and right, but it's not sufficient. He thought we don't stop the development of our personality just through those 5 stages, which, by the way, for Freud, at the end of those 5 stages was adolescence, puberty. So Erikson said, like, no. The process of developing a personality, it goes across the time throughout all our lifespan. It never stops. And he was saying, and it is not just sexual, it's also social. We are social animals, and we need to integrate with a society, and we need to develop these socio-emotional elements in us. Now, he was also saying that in every stage of life, humans have to face a challenge, a crisis between 2 options. And if you are able to resolve those challenges or crises in a positive way, that will contribute to a healthy development of your personality across your life. But if you were not able to solve one of these conflicts, challenges, crises, whatever you want to call it, that will have a negative impact in your personality development later on. Now, what are those stages? Well, the first stage is infancy. You can see it here with a milk bottle, and it says trust versus mistrust. For Erikson, in this stage, babies, they need to identify if they can trust or not their caregivers, especially the mother. We don't have time to talk about that, but there's a genetic blueprint between mom and baby that it's very interesting the way that it works, because elicits, activates oxytocin, which is it's also known as the attachment hormone, right? So the relationship between a baby and his mother in the first 2 years of life, it is really important. This was also the opinion of Sigmund Freud. This was also the opinion of Bowlby in attachment theory. This was also the opinion of Allport, G.W. Allport, which I recommend you to read him. in the conforming of the prototype, that's how he called it. This has been the opinion pretty much of every single psychologist, except Albert Ellis, but I'm not going to talk about that. So what they are saying is those first experiences are very important. And if you have a mother, and of course the father figure is so important as well, but the father has a bigger or higher impact in child's development, in the children's development, around the age of 3 to 5, 3 to 6, which is a very important stage of life as well. There's a great documentary that I will suggest you to watch it. It's called The Father Effect. You will find this documentary on YouTube. It's 1 hour long, very good, very well documentary. It's going to help you to see the importance of the father in their children's lives and development. Anyway, but in this infancy, trust versus mistrust, if the kid has a caregiver, a mother who cares about him, who comforts, who covers his physical and emotional needs, who is present for the baby, well, the baby will move out of that stage with a sense of trust. I can trust. The world, it's a safe place. I can trust, right? And that trust will be a very fundamental element throughout his or her life and in the relationship with others, the romantic life, the friends, work, and so on. But if mom was not present or the baby suffers abuse, neglect, and or if the baby had a very difficult first year on life and so on, he may end up developing mistrust. I cannot trust others. The world is a dangerous place and people can hurt me in any given moment. So what is going to happen is that people grow up thinking or experiencing, feeling this level of mistrust that is impacting negatively the relationship with others. Now, the second stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt. What does this mean? Well, around the age of 2, 3, when kids have to learn to, how do you call it in English? Well, when we train them to go to the restroom, right? Or when we train them so they can learn to control their pee, their poop, and so on. It's a very important stage. It is not only about controlling sphincters, controlling physical needs. It's also about controlling emotions. It's about self-control in general. But it's also about being able to be okay without my parents, being able to explore, being able to develop friends and so on. It's a very important stage because if you leave this stage, if you cross this stage appropriately, you're going to develop autonomy. So the capacity to know that I can take care of myself. I can face life. Of course, this is the seed, right, of an autonomy that we want to see later on in life. But that seed starts at this age. But what happens if parents are too strict, overprotectors, if they are helicopter parents, or if they are too rigid, too picky with the kid and his physiological needs, such as pee and poop and so on? Well, and if they don't allow the baby, the kid, the child to explore by himself, herself, to have this level of autonomy, well, they're going to develop shame and doubt. They're going to feel ashamed about themselves, and they're going to doubt about their capacity to face life by themselves, okay? And that shame and doubt is going to be with them for many years. Now, preschool, this is an initiative versus guilt. If you think about preschoolers, it's very interesting because they are all about crafts. They are all about inventing things. They are all about trying to do things by themselves. They take a lot of pride when they are able to put their shirt, to dress themselves. They feel proud about that, right? It's like look at me, mommy, look at me, daddy, I'm able to do it by myself. It's this initiative that we want to see in them. But again, if parents are too overprotector, or if they are too exigent and they are too strict. This Sunday, I just heard a father yelling his daughter in a tournament. My son, he does fencing, so we went to a tournament, and there was this girl. She was doing pretty good, but the father was behind her, yelling her, "You can do it better. What is that? No, that's not acceptable." And when she was being hit by the opponent, the father was like, "Ha, ha." Now he was like expressing this disappointment in front of all of us. It was sad to see. It was sad to see, because the girl, she was anxious, and anxiety and performance, they don't go hand by hand, right? So she was making more mistakes because the way that he was treating her. So that's what can happen when we are too exigent with our kids, when we expect too much about them, when we don't accept that they can make mistakes. They can develop guilt, okay? Feeling that they are guilty, feeling that they are not okay. Then there's the school age industry versus inferiority. Here is not, if you see in the first three stages, it's much more about the parents-children relationship. But in this stage, in the school age stage, it's just not about the parents. It's also about classmates. It's also about teachers. Kids become much more sociable. They spend less and less time with family at home. And because of that, they have now the influence of other people in their life. And they need to develop this sense of industry, this sense of I am competent, this sense of I can be among other people and do well. If they are not able to do that, if they are not successful at school, successful in the projects, successful developing friends, and so on, they're going to develop a sense of inferiority. That's why it's so important that we can identify the talents of our children and to see what are those talents. So again, my son, he was playing different sports and he was not doing good, and he was developing a sense of inferiority. And I'm not a super obsessed with kids need to thrive and excel in sports, as many people are here in America. I'm more about being balanced, stable, and developing human qualities. I think that is very important, that my kids can grow up as good human beings with a good sense of what is right and what is wrong, and moral. And as we were saying at the beginning of this conversation, that they have a purpose of serving others, a purpose of loving others, looking for the common good, and so on. But even though I understand that sports is very important because it's a way to achieve industry, and he was having a very bad experience until I said to him, "Hey, look, buddy, we try martial arts, we try soccer, we try basketball. What would you like to try?" And he said, "I have always liked sports, Dad. I wish there was something that I could do with swords." And I say, "Well, there's something that is called fencing. Let's see, let's try, and let's see if that's a thing for you or not." And since day number one, he was so happy. And he is good. I mean, he's still learning and he's in the process, but he's good, he enjoys, and he has that sense of industry as well, okay? Now, adolescence, in this stage is the conflict between identity and role confusion. We all were adolescents. We all see our adolescents in this time of life. We all know how peer influence is so important, media influence is so important, and we all remember how we were waking up one day and maybe not being so satisfied with what we were seeing in the mirror, trying to be someone different, trying to prove ourselves in one way or other, right? Of course, there are levels of severity, I will call it. Those who were more comfortable with the way they were, and those who who like to change themselves and so on, right? So the thing is that in adolescence is the moment that we become more independent, autonomous from our family. We have like a more social influence experience. And because of that, we start developing a sense of identity. Who am I? Okay, yes, I'm part of this family, I'm part of this society, I'm part of this religion, but is that who I really want to be? Are those my values? Is that how I see myself? Am I aligned with those ideas? And because of that, there's a natural exploration, right? In philosophical elements, religious elements, social, political elements. But precisely because of that, there's also dangers of confusing, dangers of losing perspective, dangers of not developing a real identity, but developing just, I would say, an echo identity, just a replication of what they see in our society. And because social media and media in general has so much influence nowadays in our kids, it is very important that parents can pay attention to that. Because they're going to find people in YouTube, in Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, or whatever, and they're going to start sharing ideas. And again, many adolescents, they are like sponges, right? They start absorbing, sucking these ideas to the point that they may be very, what's the word? They may be very vocal about what they want to be in life and what I am in life, but maybe it's just an echo, a consequence of what they have been listening from other people. And maybe they have never been exposed to that other people. They might never ended up with those ideas. Who knows, right? And this is true for religious, sexual, political, and many other areas of life. Think about a life without social media, without the technology that we have nowadays, with media in general, and many of the things that our adolescents are questioning might never exist, as they didn't exist in previous generations, right? Or at least not in the levels that we see nowadays. And that's true also about drugs, alcohol, promiscuity, and so on, right? So it is a very important stage, adolescence, and that's why I always suggest my patients that are my clients that are adolescents, look, it's good that you go and you explore the world. It's good that you read different ideas, that you can understand different religious perspectives, political perspectives, everything, but don't forget who you are. Because, and this is something that I hope we never forget, we were created with purpose and meaning in life. We are the result of a divine thought. When our parents, they conceived us, when that first cell, the zygote, that is the result of the union between the egg and the sperm, was developed. That first stage of human development, the zygote, that's the result of a divine thought. God was thinking on you. He knew you at that time. He knew who you were, and he created you with a purpose. So let's encourage our adolescents to, yes, go, look, explore, learn, but don't forget that you are children of God, that you have meaning, that you were created with meaning and purpose. Don't forget who you are. Then in the young adulthood, intimacy versus isolation. Well, are you going to be able to connect with others? Are you going to develop long-lasting friendships, relationships? Are you going to develop a romantic life, a committed romantic life? Are you going to be able to commit yourself to one person? Are you going to develop that level of intimacy? One of the things that I said to my students in my lifespan development class is like, when you're dating someone and you really want to be serious with that person and see if that person is serious with you, ask questions about their lifespan development. Ask difficult questions. Ask about their parents. Ask about traumatic events. Ask about things that hurt, things that didn't hurt, things that they were edifying, things that were positive and negative in their lives, things that they regret. See if that person is able and willing to share with you their shadow, the dark side. Because if you are able to know that side of a person, and even though love that person, then you're going to be more able to be united with the bright side, with the positive side of that person. Knowing that person, not the parts that that person wants to show us, or the parts that we want to see in that person, but completely. And being able to see if I am or I am not able to love this person completely. So that's intimacy. But if you don't develop intimacy, the result is isolation, right? And again, isolation is poisonous. People who don't have friends, people who don't have a romantic life, people who struggle to have an intimate relationship. That's something that struck me when I came to the United States, to see the amount of people that they are isolated. People who were born in Texas, then they grew up in California, then they went to college to New York, and then they got a job in Chicago. And therefore, they don't have neither friends, relatives, no one close to them. They do have a very nice job, they do have a very nice house, but they don't have close relationships, ties, right? That's many of my patients, when I was working as a counselor here, they were sharing that with me, and for me, it was shocking to see. Middle adulthood, generativity versus stagnation. So here, Erickson is telling us, are you able to go beyond yourself? Because if you think the first 40 years of life, and this is a Carl Gustav Jung idea as well, is finding yourself in the world, trying to find your place in the world, trying to build a name for yourself, to build a career, to build a family, right? But then something happened after the age of 40. We start thinking less and less on us and more in others. We start thinking on how can we contribute to our society, to others. Not all of us, but some of us, or most of us, I would say. And that's generativity. That can be achieved either by being a parent, a good parent, I would say, bringing children and being a good parent for your children, dedicating yourself to altruistic causes, trying to see how to share your experience in life to the following generation, and so on. It's how can I contribute to this place? How can I contribute to the next generation before I grew up older? Now, stagnation is the opposite. It's a person who's resentful. It's a person who has not been able to achieve intimacy, an identity, an industry initiative, autonomy, trust. It's a person that their life is miserable, that they have no connections, they are self-centered, and they are not thinking on how to contribute. They are just thinking on themselves as victims of society, victims of the system, victims of these parents, friends, and so on, right? And that brings resentment, that brings misery, that brings a lot of pain. There's a great book that I would like to suggest you guys. It's called Notes from Underground by Dostoevsky, a great Russian writer, and he describes very, very vividly what is a person in stagnation. I think that you would like to read it. It's a beautiful book. Now, maturity, it's ego integrity versus despair. This is the last of the stage. He says when we are in the late adulthood, if we are able to look back and see your life in retrospective and to accept with humility and even with love things that hurt us, things that were good for us, the things that we were able to achieve and things that we were not able to achieve, if we're able to celebrate the life that we had, even though it was not perfect if we are able to see that we did a good job with the time that it was given to us, then that's ego integrity. We feel integrated. But if we are not, if we look back and we see pain, shame, if we were not able to, if we don't have that sense of I did something good with my life, then the result is despair. And of course, that is associated with many mental health problems, physical health problems, life expectancy, and so on. So this is Erik Erikson's Stages of Psychosocial Development. Of course, his theory is much more complex than what I just shared here with you. But what I want to tell you is, where are you located? I know that I have students, some of you are young, very young, others are not as young. Which stage are you located? Are you still in the identity versus role confusion? Are you in intimacy versus isolation? Or are you in generativity versus stagnation? And how are you living that? Do you think that your psychosocial development has been good, has been positive? Do you think that now that we have seen this theory, do you see areas that were not solved appropriately, conflicts that you are struggling with, perhaps from another time in your life, from your childhood, your adolescence? And if that's the case, what are you doing? So I would love if you can share your thoughts with me, of course, about the whole lecture, but if you can share thoughts about your psychosocial development, the stage of psychosocial development that you are located right now, how are you dealing with that? And what are the pros and the cons and so on? All right, so having talked about that, let's go to the assignment, okay? And I found this, it's very interesting. It says, altruism is sexy. How selflessness could increase an individual's desirability backed by science. And I took this from an article. I'm going to share that link with you. I hope you can go and read that article, because what I have been trying to share with you today is real social self-care is a selfless self-care. It sounds contradictory, right? It's thinking in others. It's thinking on how can I develop generativity instead of stagnation in my life? How can I contribute to others? How can I be, as Jesus was telling me, love your neighbor as you love yourself? And how, when I do that, I am loving God. So your assignment, guys, participate in an altruistic cause and explain your experience in a 2-page paper. Okay, you need to submit this on Saturday. I know it's Thanksgiving Day. If you need extra time, send me an email. Tell me how much extra time you need. No more than 1 extra week, I will say. But you need to send me an email, okay? Otherwise, you will fail the assignment. If you are able to do it during this week, that's awesome. Some ideas. You can go and donate blood and see how that feels. Or you can think on someone, maybe a neighbor that is alone, an elderly, and maybe you can cook for that person, and you can invite that person to your home, and you can spend a couple of hours for a dinner with that person. If you have family, it will be an amazing experience for your whole family, right? Receiving this person just because you want to share with them. Or maybe you can go to a homeless shelter and prepare dinner there for them, serve them in different ways. Or maybe you can go to, what's the word for foster care system, foster care house, or I don't know how to call it, but where the children are living without parents and spend some time. Or now it's Thanksgiving. Maybe you can invite someone home, someone that has no one else to share the Thanksgiving night, and you can bring that person, even if it's a person that you don't know, right? Or maybe a person that you had a fight with and you haven't talked with that person for a long time, and you can invite them as a sign of loving your neighbor. Maybe it's a family member, maybe it's your dad, your mom, your brother, your sister, your son, your daughter, or a friend, whatever you want to do. But I want you to have that experience and write down your experience in a paper. Share with me your experience in a paper, two pages long. And you can also include elements from this presentation or from other research or whatever you want to include it in your paper, okay? But I want to know your experience of doing something altruistic and and maybe if you will be willing to continue doing that. So this is the link that I was telling you. You can read that paper. I'm going to share this with you, this presentation, as I have been doing with the other presentations. So you can go on and read the paper of Altruism is Sexy. See what you think about it. All right. So with that said, I hope that you enjoy this lesson. We are at the end of it. And I hope also that you have a great week, that you enjoy Thanksgiving. And I want to thank you. I'm going to include you guys in my Thanksgiving list of things that I'm grateful, because without you, I will not be able to be a professor. Without students, I'm not a professor. So very happy to have you, very thankful to have you. God bless you guys, and I hope to see you next week.